Ever since I started Aikido, I wanted to become an Aikido Sensei. I wanted to introduce people to this practice, which positively influenced my life. Yet little did I know that by taking over the positive benefits of Aikido, I also took on a lot of negative aspects, which I later passed on to my students. Hi, my name is Rokas, and in this martial arts journey video, I will share my story on how I learned how being an Aikido Sensei can be abused. I started training Aikido when I was 14 years old. Since Aikido is based on a hierarchy system, the role of an authority figure there was very important from day one. While my first Aikido instructor did not ask me to call him sensei, he was definitely the authority figure of the dojo and a very important role model to me at the day. I trusted him completely, and whatever he said, I believed in 100%. Unfortunately, having such a young and receptive mind, I had little power to control and distinguish what were the good traits of him and which were the bad ones to pick up from. The same happened as I moved on to other instructors. After training Aikido for 8 years, I was eventually ready to become a professional Aikido Sensei. I had all the best intentions, yet I opened my professional Aikido dojo when I was only 22 years old and had little understanding on how things worked. Thus, I naturally ended up repeating the way my Aikido instructors presented themselves and ran their dojos, thinking that was the best way since it worked well enough for me being their student. Unfortunately, I had no way of knowing what's going to happen next. My dojo was running well in terms of attendance, yet occasionally some major crisis would happen. They either came up as problems between me and some of my students, or between the students themselves. While I was able to solve these crises in one way or the other, these situations kept repeating themselves, and I started wondering why. With enough curiosity, after running the dojo for about a year, I realized that most of them actually came from how I ran things and presented myself. First of all, I left no space for my students to question me. Every time they had some issue, I was quick to blame them and explain why it was their fault, without taking responsibility myself. After all, in my belief, it was not fitting for a sensei to take on responsibility. While I pointed out their mistakes most of the times rightfully, I never addressed or gave space to address what I did wrong. This way, staying clean, yet that gave no space for them to offer me feedback to grow from. This also led my students to develop fear towards addressing anything to me, since they knew they were going to get punished, if they will, and they would end up keeping things in, which had terrible outcome as well. Eventually, they could not hold it in anymore, which led either to talks behind my back or an explosion of emotions, leading to a big crisis to deal with. This was not the only issue though. I also realized that I was using my position of authority to influence them into doing what I needed them to do, in my opinion, for the best of the dojo, and in my opinion, for themselves. Yet if I made the wrong exception, they had to pay the price by their experience. Also, their creativity and independence was limited, and they felt that they needed to ask permission for every smallest of decisions and questions they felt they needed to ask me. I was holding all the cards, and that was not helping them grow. The way I presented myself also had a negative impact. In order to hold the dojo together, I thought I needed to be perfect, and I always tried to present only the best side of myself. I would not discuss my personal flaws or problems with my students, and soon enough, they started perceiving me as a perfect human being. Yet while that was inspiring to them to a degree, if occasionally some of my flaws came out to surface, it was devastating to them, since it shocked them to learn I was actually a human being, and this blow would lead them to lose faith in my teachings entirely. The situation also limited my personal life. While holding this image of perfection, I learned that if I decided to have a beer somewhere out in a bar, both my students and even people outside of the dojo who knew me suddenly came to a conclusion that I was a complete fraud. For them, it was an all or nothing relationship, because in a sense, that is the way I set it up. Them having an expectation that a perfect human being may exist, and if I failed to be one, then everything I offered had suddenly lost all value to them. These set up false expectations had also a negative impact on their personal self-perception. Developing a belief that I was somewhat perfect made a lot of them believe that this is the way they need to become as well. Since it was unrealistic, it created constant stress of setting too high expectations for themselves. In the end, some of them also started presenting a false image of perfection as well, while also taking over my bad ways of conduct, such as developing fear-based relationships with other students. When I realized the negative impact my actions had on people I worked with, I decided to tear down all of my negative patterns and to start changing things. The first thing I did, I invited a meeting with all of my senior students and encouraged them to say everything they didn't like about what I did. In the beginning, they were concerned that as soon as they will say something, I will put the blames on them as always. Yet when they realized that that wasn't happening, I was in for a 3-hour non-stop listening session of what I did wrong. I realized how much my students were holding back, of which most of I did not know, just because I gave no space for them to express it. As the next step, I started addressing my flaws and mistakes openly every chance I got, taking as much responsibility on what was happening that I could. I also stopped trying to present myself in a better light than I actually was, and I started being much more natural. It was interesting and difficult at the same time to observe how that influenced my students of that time. Most of them lost completely all faith in anything I was doing. Their object of worship was suddenly destroyed, and they did not know what to do with the reality now they faced. They were used to something more, even when it was not real, and I turned out not to be enough for them as a simple human being with some Aikido, yoga, and meditation skill set and knowledge. It was a difficult period of transition, and I lost pretty much all of my students. Yet eventually, new students came, and now they got to know a different version of me and the dojo. Much more limited, but also much more authentic, realistic, and relatable. After years of working in this new way, setting up realistic expectations, taking on responsibility, giving space for creativity, and offering myself and my teachings with both the good and the bad, with time, I started to see much better results and much better relationships, which were based on common sense and critical thinking. If I made a mistake, I was quick to acknowledge it, and that became a lesson to all of us. My students' mistakes were also accepted, and that gave them space to learn and grow as themselves, not as some image of perfection. This led to a dojo and student base which was much more healthy, and most of the crises which used to happen stopped happening entirely. Up to this day, I look back at the change that was made in how I use my authority, and while it was very difficult to experience the change at the time, I never regretted it. Oftentimes, reality is not as fascinating as fantasy, yet it is the only place where long-lasting, positive results may endure, and everything that is based on fantasy is doomed to be destroyed sooner or later. It is very important to always question ourselves. It is very important to always check what we take on from others and what we pass on to others. And as long as we do, great results may happen. I hope you will find where to draw inspiration from my story, whether you are a student or an instructor. This can happen to any school or style, so let me know what your experience is in the comments. If you like the video, make sure to like and share it to spread this message further. If you want more videos like this one, subscribe to the Martial Arts Journey channel. This was Rokas, and as always, I wish you to own your journey.